Hey, it's Heike. Do you ever feel like life is so busy that taking care of yourself falls to the bottom of the list? My client Maria knows exactly how that felt. Maria is 62. She is a lawyer who could never find time for herself. Between her demanding job and caring for her elderly parents, exercise and healthy eating often took a backseat. She had always been intrigued by intermittent fasting, but worried about fitting it into her busy life. With the Fasted and Fit Over 50 Jumpstart, Maria found the perfect introduction to a healthier lifestyle. And the 15-minute Pilates sessions were easy to fit into her day, and the fasting schedule was flexible enough for her busy work hours. By the end of the course, Maria felt more focused and less bloated, ready to continue her new habits. If you see yourself in Maria's story and want to try the course, check the link in the show notes to get started. Hey, are you one of the 60% of women that doesn't get a good night's sleep, keeps waking up at night, either with night sweats or just simply waking up at 3 a.m. and just can't go to sleep? I am with you right there because I still have those nights where I wake up at 3 in the morning, wide awake and ready to roll, even though I only got 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I'm Heike Yates, and I am the host of the Pursue Your Spark podcast, and I'm super excited that you're joining me, especially for the topic today. So today's episode is for those of you who feel that you tried everything and nothing seems to work. So today's episode is titled, What Your Midlife Insomnia is Trying to Tell You. And I'm super excited to welcome Martha Lewis to the show. Martha is a certified sleep expert and the mastermind behind the Sleep Detective. She also hosts her own Sleep Detective podcast. Martha has made it her mission to uncover the root causes of insomnia, from gut health and hormones to mineral imbalances. She uses detailed lab testing to find those hidden triggers and crafts personalized plans to help her clients sleep soundly. This is beyond the close the blinds, don't look at your phone before you go to sleep, take a hot bath. But Martha does not stop at the physical aspect of sleep. She also explores the mental and emotional aspects, helping people manage stress and overcome sleep anxiety. Her holistic approach is all about achieving truly restorative sleep. Today, Martha will explain the hidden messages behind midlife insomnia and show us how to reclaim your restful nights. Let's dive into our featured content. This is the Pursue Your Spark podcast, and I am Heike Yates. If you're feeling stuck in midlife, wondering, how did I get here? You're in the right place. We're all about real transformation, not quick fixes. My mission is to help you break free from limiting beliefs and outdated habits using fitness and wellness as tools for change. Each episode offers practical strategies for turning complex challenges into simple, actionable steps. So bring your yes, I can attitude and earbuds, and let's explore how you can truly thrive in midlife. Hey, everybody. I am especially excited today for our guest, Martha Lewis. She is the Sleep Detective, and you will get so many amazing nuggets that you have never heard about sleep. So hold on to your seats and your hats and get ready to dive in with Martha Lewis, all about sleep and insomnia. So Martha, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Yes, I came across you, and I always like to share this with my listeners because people are thinking, oh, how do you meet all these people? Do you know these people? And I came across Martha at another podcast that was all about podcasting, and it's called the Podcast Business School. And she mentioned her podcast, and I knew my gang over here in midlife is going to lap it up. And I put also a whole bunch of questions in for Martha that pertain to me. But before we dive in, I want to know, how do you stay active and healthy, Martha?
Well, I live in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is a ski mountain town. So I'm definitely love being outside. So I like to go backcountry snowboarding and hiking and running in the winter. And I do yoga and walk the dog. So I'm definitely active pretty much every day.
I wasn't quite sure if you still lived in Jackson Hole. I saw that on, as I did my research. This is one of the places I have not skied yet. I hear it's amazing.
It is. It's one of the steepest and most vertical mountains in the lower 48 states. And it's absolutely beautiful.
And I always hear you guys get a lot of snow. How was this year?
Yes, it's good. It started off slow, but lately, February was a record month and it's been snowing a lot in March. So we already are at 400 inches for the year so far.
Okay, skiers, all of you out there, get your butt skis over to Jackson Hole.
Yes.
But I want to know, can you share a story with us that about what brought you to being a sleep detective, to this path of life?
Yes, I think it's funny that I've ended up here in a way. I've always been into health and wellness and nutrition and always slept great until I was pregnant. And in my third trimester, I got insomnia and I was miserable because I need sleep, I would say. But I figured it was just hormones and there wasn't much I could do about it. But then after my son was born, I still wasn't sleeping. My son also was a horrible sleeper. So even by the time he was 3 months old, he was waking up every 45 minutes to 2 hours all night long. And I was like, why have I become a mother? I had it so good before. What have I done? And I ended up hiring a sleep consultant and to help with his sleep. And within 4 nights, he was waking up once a night. My life was totally changed. And so I became a pediatric sleep consultant to help families with their kids' sleep. And then I realized that I still wasn't sleeping. So even though now my son is sleeping, I'm not. I was like having a hard time falling asleep. And then I was awake every night at 3 a.m. for a couple hours and would finally get back to sleep around 6. But that's when my son was waking up for the day. So then I'm only getting like 6 hours of sleep a night. And night after night after night of that, I was miserable. And, I talked to some people who they're fine. Like they were like, I wish I could get 6 hours of sleep. I'm only getting 2 hours of sleep. I'm like, I cannot function until I have like 8 hours of sleep. So I went on this journey to try to figure out my sleep. I followed what's called the sleep hygiene. I call it the sleep rules, like having a bedtime routine and not drinking caffeine too late in the day and exercising every day, like all the things you hear everywhere. And those things helped a little bit until I went through a stressful time. And then none of those things worked. And I had insomnia again. And luckily, I saw someone who was doing lab testing, like functional lab testing for sleep. And I was like, I just had this aha moment, like, this makes so much sense. There's something more going on because I've tried everything. I tried every supplement under the sun. And so I decided to become certified. I learned how to interpret these tests and give recommendations based on the results. And when I did the test myself, I found out I had a parasite. I had hormone imbalance. I had heavy metal toxicity. I was sensitive to gluten. And all of these things I learned were affecting my sleep. So once I started correcting those, that's when I started sleeping better. And so now that's how I help others with their sleep.
Oh my God, you just dinged off a whole bunch of bucket list items right in that whole paragraph. You just told us about your life. Like, because I woke up this morning at 2:30 a.m. and twiddled my thumbs and I was like, okay, this is the second night in a row. Seriously, I don't want to. I want to go sleep. And so it's really interesting when we talk about this a little bit later of what your recommendations are and how we can go about this. And also talking about, like you touched on, some people claim they're doing great on 4 hours of sleep, but how can you explain why sleep is crucial for overall health and also at different stages of life, including midlife? Well, I'm 62 and I'm definitely in midlife. I'm past menopause. And how much sleep do we really need?
Yeah. So there's this myth out there that we need less sleep as we get older. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Matthew Walker. He's a prominent sleep researcher at Berkeley. And he has this quote that I recently saw that was like, we still need sleep. It's just harder and harder as we get older to get the sleep that we need. So really the recommendation is between 7 and 9 hours. There's also this myth that 8 hours is a magic number. It is different for everyone. So, but at least 7 hours. And that's recommended because getting fewer than 7 hours of sleep has shown to have an increased risk of many different chronic diseases. So everything from heart disease to diabetes to depression to certain kinds of cancer. And that's because so many important things happen when we're sleeping. Like first of all, like amyloid plaques that are believed to contribute to Alzheimer's, those are cleared away when we sleep. It's where our memories are made and how we store information long term. So it's super important for learning and remembering things. And yes, it's when our blood sugar is regulated. It's when like growth hormone is released, even in adults at all ages. And so really all these repair processes are happening while we sleep. So it makes sense that if we aren't getting enough sleep, then it is going to affect our health over time.
Yeah. And also it's, if you don't sleep, you raise your cortisol levels. And that's what a lot of women dealing with. And you don't even think about that sleep is, I won't say to blame, but it's part of the problem.
Yeah.
And your weight gain and all the mood situations that we're talking about and mental health and all this kind of stuff. Because I tell you, I'm going to take a nap today, which we're also going to take later about. But I was like, oh, Martha's coming on the show. So this is going to be great. Now, how does the quality of sleep compare to the quantity?
Yeah. So it definitely is, quality of sleep is more important than how much you're getting. And a lot of people are tracking their sleep and, using kind of external data to see how they're sleeping. I think it's most important how you feel. So if someone feels great, if they get 7 hours of sleep and they wake up and they feel rested, great. That's probably enough for them. But, many people I talk to, they know that the quality of sleep isn't good. They're constantly waking up or they're in more of the lighter stages of sleep. And that is when you wake up feeling tired still, like, feeling like you didn't really sleep. And so, yes, quality is super important. Even if you're getting 8 hours, if you're waking up not feeling rested, something's going on there too. And that's not how it should be.
I looked at just recently, I spent a week with my son, his wife, and our granddaughter in Spain, and we had adjoining rooms. And on my side of the room, it's probably the worst sleep I had for a long time because I kept listening for the baby, although I'm not the parent, right?
Funny.
And so I was up. My husband's like, I sleep great. And I'm like, no, I'm listening for little Lila. And he's like, well, she has the parents right in the room with her. And then I look at my son or I took pictures. And then later on, a friend of mine said, oh, look at your son. And I looked at the picture really closely and big, huge sleep circles under his eyes, dark circles from being a dad. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember those times.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. But what are some of the common myths about getting better sleep that may be misleading or unhelpful?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, again, bringing up the whole sleep hygiene and sleep rules, as I call them, is that like when you Google how to sleep better, that's all that comes up.
Yep.
And I know it's so frustrating for people who are like, I'm doing all those things and I still can't sleep. So I feel like that has almost become harmful. Like this is all you need to fix it. And what I want people to know is that, no, if you're doing all those things and you still can't sleep, there's something more going on. There are imbalances in your body that are causing that. And so I think there's not a lot of awareness about that because also everyone tells me they go to their doctor, they get blood work run, everything's normal. And so their doctor's either like, hey, follow sleep hygiene, or it's all in your head. This must be anxiety, which also really frustrates me because, that makes it seem like it's someone's fault. And like, there's also like a psychologist should be able to help them. And if they can't, then there's just something wrong with them. And I believe that the same imbalances in the body that can cause insomnia can also cause anxiety. And so it's very much, I believe there's so much of a physical connection to our mental health as well. And so many physical imbalances that can manifest what looks like mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And so, so thanks for asking that question, because that's some of the myths that I definitely want to.
And that's exactly when I was preparing for the interview. And what drew me to you as a guest for the show is because you said in the little clip I heard about you, you said, it's not about what you hear and what you read. This will change your life. My approach and how we're doing this, you will get sleep. But here's what you need to do. And that's why I was like, we need to get you on the show, because I was like, keep the room at 69. I can't sleep at 69. I need at least 71. Well, I'm 62. I have still night sweats occasionally. Right. I've got dark blinds to really cover the room, but I still was up today at 2:30 twiddling my thumbs. I was like, hello, I'm back. Right. So all these things, and I hear this over and over too, not just for women that go through menopause, but also like myself, postmenopausal, we still have this waking up, or like my husband in this case, he can't go to sleep oftentimes. He takes him hour to sometimes 2 hours to fall asleep. Right. And so these different rhythms that we have, and we think, at least I'm like, it just is what it is.
Yes.
But what can unconventional insights can functional testing provide about sleep disturbances, and why might standard sleep studies fall short on that?
Yes. So
there are two pieces.
Yes, right. Yeah. So to start, I'll say that I see insomnia, not sleeping well, as a sign that the body's out of balance. So it's a symptom of a bigger problem. It's your body saying, hey, something's not right, because we are meant to sleep well. Like, we as humans, we need sleep, as we've talked about, the reasons why. I always think we've evolved for tens of thousands of years without, evolving out of our need to spend a third of our lives asleep. Like, that's how important it is. So if someone isn't sleeping, there's something getting in the way of that. And so the things I'm looking for are sex hormone imbalance, cortisol, like you talk about, not sleeping causes high cortisol levels, but also then high cortisol levels affect sleep. So that's a common reason why people are waking up at night. Lack of neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA can affect sleep. Liver detox issues, mineral imbalances, toxins like heavy metals. Like, there's so many different things that can affect sleep that I think people aren't aware of. So I use functional lab testing to look at the big picture. Okay, what's going on in the body? What's out of whack? I see it as it's kind of like a puzzle, and everyone's pieces are a little bit different. There's always more than one thing. So it's not just hormones, like we think of that in midlife. But by the time hormones are out of balance enough to be affecting sleep, also the gut likely isn't healthy. The liver isn't detoxing properly. Minerals have become out of balance. Like, it's just led to other pieces. And so I use the testing to get the different pieces for each person and put together their puzzle so that we don't miss anything, and help them get their bodies back in balance so that they can sleep. Mm-hmm. And so that's the value of functional lab testing that is different than blood work, again, that tends to come back normal for people. That's meant to diagnose disease, like once it's gotten bad enough for blood work to be out of balance. Like, this is almost preventative in a way, and seeing what's out of balance before it's really bad. And then, so how that differs from a sleep studies are mainly looking for sleep apnea. And so they'll hook you up to all these things. It will show you whether you're sleeping or not. But also if if you stop breathing and how many times that happens in a night. So a sleep study might show that you aren't sleeping well, or that you only slept 6 hours. It's not going to tell you why or what's causing that. But what they're really looking for is apnea and other very rare disorders, and selling CPAP machines. So most people I talk to have done a sleep study, And it hasn't really helped at all because it's not giving them answers.
I know two people. And so I was like, oh, this is a really good question. My neighbor went for a sleep study and he's like, I can't sleep, Heike. I'm always tired and it's the kids and this. So I'm going to go to a sleep study. And he went and he says, well, yeah, they told me I don't sleep well. I'm like, now what?
Yeah. Like you already knew that.
He says, well, they said I need to go outside more and exercise. So that lasted only for, as far as I could tell, maybe a month, because he's definitely not into exercise.
Yeah.
And he literally has to force himself to exercise. But he would make a good push. And I said, well, how's it going? He's like, well, I'm taking a sleep aid now because it's like, I just don't sleep much better. And then I was like, okay. And then the other example is a client's husband. Her husband got a machine and she's like, he's sleeping with that whole contract. I don't even know what it looks like, but I think of it as like big mouthpiece and over the face and big machine next to the bed that does whatever it does. And I'm wondering, like you said, is that really necessary? Or is it just because health insurance want to sell us stuff, medication, and the whole healthcare system is just so tuned into giving us drugs and gadgets?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. I mean, sleep apnea is a real issue and for many people, and it does have health consequences. Like, because if you're constantly waking up, not getting enough oxygen to your brain, you aren't getting the sleep you need. I mean, the risk of heart disease is really high for people with apnea if it goes untreated. But and many people I work with have apnea and insomnia. And they're very much two different things, right? Like apnea is this disordered breathing. Insomnia is not being able to either fall asleep or fall back asleep in the middle of the night. And so, yeah, many people have both. And also there's some correlations with sleep apnea that have to do with physical imbalances too. Like, for example, there's a bacteria called H. pylori that lives in the stomach that I see in many of my clients. And there are studies correlating that with sleep apnea. So, sleep apnea can be a structural issue, but it can also be from inflammation in the body. And so if, when we find out where that inflammation is coming from, then a lot of times the sleep apnea goes away. So I think that CPAP machine isn't the only answer. And honestly, sounds awful to me. I don't know that I could sleep in one of those either. But and a CPAP is not going to fix insomnia. Like if you wake up from apnea, but then it takes you 2 hours to fall asleep, the CPAP isn't helping with that. It could be keeping you from going to sleep faster too.
Yeah. Now this is crazy. Now, when we're talking about diet and exercise and particular blood sugar levels, how do they influence our sleeping patterns? Would be dietary adjustments or anything that you can talk about this topic would be helpful for our listeners?
Yes. Great question. So, I mean, diet plays a huge role, and because as Americans and in the Western world, we tend to eat a lot of inflammatory foods. So I'm talking refined sugar, refined flours, even gluten and dairy for a lot of people who are sensitive to those foods. And so when we're eating these processed inflammatory foods, refined oils is another, big thing that's in all processed foods. They cause a lot of inflammation in the body. Whenever there's inflammation, the body releases cortisol, because it's an anti-inflammatory hormone. So it's also our stress hormone, and it's going to make us wired and alert and increase our heart rate and blood pressure and body temperature. So when we're eating these inflammatory foods, then we're having this low-grade inflammation all the time. And so that's also going to continue into the night. And when the body releases cortisol at night, it's going to wake us up and keep us from being able to sleep. So that's one of the first things I suggest that anyone can do on their own is, eat more of an anti-inflammatory diet. And that also means avoiding alcohol. Alcohol is also very inflammatory. And see if that helps. It might not be enough to tip the scales to really help your sleep. And a lot of people I work with, they're already eating pretty well. Like they already know that. But I do just want to say how important that is. And then when we talk,
I know that people know, but from my experience working with my clients in my courses, they don't really know. they don't really think it's a big deal if
Yeah.
they have their bagel every day.
Right.
Let's just use it as an example because donuts is so overrated. Everybody uses donuts. I'm like, bagel. Bagel has a lot of sugar in it too. And it's a lot of calories, but the sugar in itself is like, it affects you. And they're thinking, but I've got a whole grain bagel. I'm like, but it's not good. It increases inflammation if you do this every day.
Yes. And like, the second part of your question about blood sugar, that's definitely impacting blood sugar. And so blood sugar is so important for sleep because when our blood sugar is drastically up and down all day, I say, it's on the roller coaster. So say you do start your day with a bagel and a cup of coffee, like your blood sugar is going to spike super high. Then your body releases insulin to lower it. Then it drops really low. And then your body releases cortisol because it's stressed, and cortisol actually releases glucose into our cells. And when your blood sugar drops low, it makes you crave quick energy foods, which tend to be the unhealthy foods. And so then blood sugar spikes really high again, and then you're on that extreme roller coaster. When that's happening all day, it's continuing into the night. And so whenever your blood sugar drops too low at night, your body's going to release cortisol. It's going to wake you up. So this is one of the first things I start working on with our clients. It takes about a month to get the lab results back. We start working on diet and blood sugar right away because that's some low-hanging fruit that's, for a lot of people, having this big impact. And so what I've started recommending is that people start testing their blood sugar. That's the only way we're going to know if it's an issue. And so there are glucometers you can buy where you prick your finger. They're pretty inexpensive at the drugstore. I also recommend a continuous glucose monitor where you put something in your arm. I actually have one in my arm right now.
It's not on top of the arm or on the chest. It's under the arm. Right. Why is that?
Well, it's actually testing the interstitial fluid instead of the blood. But it's more comfortable, I think, to have it in like the fatty part of your arm. But so you wear it for 2 weeks and it's constantly tracking your blood sugar. And so you can see how what you eat is affecting it. You can see what's happening at night. It's so fascinating. Like I had a man last night, he told me that he went to bed at 10, he woke up at 11:30. And we looked at his CGM, it's called continuous glucose monitor results. His blood sugar dropped drastically right at 11:30. I'm like, this is so cool to see this. And his wasn't from eating. It was more from stress. Like he did something before bed with his mother that was very stressful. But it's crazy how we could actually see that dip. And that's exactly when he woke up. So so monitoring that is so important.
In that case, what did you tell him to do? Just for him specifically. That's not advice for anybody else listening, but I'm curious now. So it's like in the middle of the night, 11 o'clock. What was a strategy that you used for him?
Well, once your body is releasing cortisol, there's not much you can do except for stay calm. I mean, I think when we wake up, I know this was me, when I was in the peak of my insomnia, is like, then you're stressed and worried and so exhausted and thinking, like trying to think of what you did wrong that day that's making you be awake. And so part of it is like accepting where you are in the moment. I usually recommend getting out of bed if it's been a while and you aren't falling back asleep, and reading or doing something relaxing with the lights really dim. And just kind of giving time for that cortisol to kind of go through your body and your body to clear it out. There's not much you can do once that happens. But it's also awareness. Okay. Like, okay, I see how this triggered it. So I'm going to be more careful of what I do before bedtime. And if something happens, like, at least you know why. And it was just, like he couldn't have avoided what happened that night. Right. But we could see why it was happening. And so, I think it's powerful to at least know, and that's going to happen every once in a while. And it's not a big deal. But for the most part, try to avoid stressful things happening before bed and that's why the bedtime routine and all that is important. But, it's not enough if blood sugar is dropping low from what you're eating every day.
Yeah. Yeah. In his case, it was the stress, which also like stress affects us. The eating affects us. Exercise can affect us. And I want to touch a little bit on that as well. And Yeah, that's why we're also in any of my courses, we talk about how to do mindfulness practice, how to
Yes.
unwind before and write down or record
Yes.
or do yoga or breathing exercises. I'm a big fan of breathing exercises to
Yes.
calm down the nervous system.
Exactly. Yeah, I recommend the same thing. I always say we can't go all day and then just fall into bed and expect to go to sleep. Like we're not meant to be as busy as we are
Oh,
in
that's
modern life. So,
absolutely. I
yeah.
couldn't agree more with that. Now,
Yeah.
exercise is also, at least from my end as a fitness Pilates coach, is the exercising at night. We know if we exercise at night, it keeps us awake. Not everybody, but many. Why is that?
Well, exercise I think one of the main reasons it raises our body temperature for a couple hours after. And part of going to sleep, actually, our body temperature drops a little bit. And so when that drop isn't happening, it does make it hard to go to sleep. So I think that's a big part of the reason why exercise too late affects sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to tap back a little bit, a question, because a lot of our listeners are practicing intermittent fasting, are interested in intermittent fasting. And of course, I teach in all my courses, intermittent fasting strategies. What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting and sleep?
Yes. Great question. So I think intermittent fasting is great. I actually do it myself when someone is healthy. When someone isn't sleeping well, I don't recommend a long fast. I do recommend for everyone 12 hours of digestive rest, I call it. But when we start pushing more than 16 hours, that is a stressor on the body. And in a healthy body, that's good. It's called a hormetic stressor, right? It's like exercise. It stresses the muscles, but it makes them stronger. So fasting is the same. Like it's good if you're healthy. It's a good kind of stress. But when you're already stressed from not sleeping, then that's just adding additional stress that is too much, in my opinion. So I actually suggest that people don't do long fast until they're sleeping better. And then once they're sleeping better, it's great. And intermittent fasting is great also for blood sugar, for sure. So I think it definitely has benefits before someone who's healthy without many other symptoms.
Yeah, it's not going to cure. If you just start fasting, it's not going to cure it because of the autophagy, the turnover. You're thinking, okay, it's gonna do something for my gut health. But it's not really when, like you pointed out, if you're not healthy and you already started out not sleeping.
Right. Yeah. And, I'll work with clients who they're like, I'm eating one meal a day. I mean, one man was eating 4,000 calories all at once.
Oh, God.
And as soon as we started having him on 3 meals, he started sleeping better. I mean, so I think it can be taken to the extreme. And like anything, there's not one thing out there that is good for every single person. Any diet,
absolutely.
Not everyone should be keto or low carb or high fat or like anything. In my opinion, we're all metabolically different. And so, so intermittent fasting isn't great for everyone at different points in their lives. And it's great for a lot of people.
Yep. And I couldn't agree more, but it's like you laid it already out especially since we're talking about sleep today, how it does affect your sleep. And oftentimes we're talking, and I did talk about this, the circadian rhythm. But again, you're looking at being healthy already to start with and sleeping relatively well, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, it's Heike. Have you ever felt skeptical about trying something new, especially when it comes to your health? Susan was right there with you. Susan is 57, and she had always been skeptical about new diets and exercise routines. As a retired teacher and active grandma, she struggled to stick with anything too extreme. She'd heard about intermittent fasting, but was hesitant to try it. When Susan found the Fasted and Fit Over 50 Jumpstart, she gave it a shot because it sounded manageable. To her surprise, the course made starting intermittent fasting and Pilates simple. Within 2 weeks, Susan felt more energized and noticed she was snacking less without feeling overwhelmed. If you're curious like Susan and want to try the Fasted and Fit Over 50 Jumpstart, I'll leave a link in the show notes for you to check it out. Let's pivot over to your concept of positive intelligence. I thought that was such a cool word. two words. What is positive intelligence, Martha?
Yes. So, I did a podcast about this recently because while we've talked a lot about the physical parts of not sleeping, there are also psychological parts to this as well. So I very much believe in a body and mind approach. And so positive intelligence is kind of about your mindset, really. And I say it's like how much your mind is being your friend versus being your enemy. So the higher your positive intelligence, the more your mind is working for you instead of working against you. And what that means is that we have a lot of negative self-talk, saboteurs, they can be called as well, and so it's if you're thinking things like, I can't sleep, I'll never sleep again. What am I doing wrong? I have a client who says it all the time, like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, none of those thoughts are working for you. And so it's like recognizing those and then getting in touch with the wise part of ourselves that the saboteurs aren't influencing, that knows that we're meant to be healthy, we're meant to sleep, we're meant to be happy as well. Like it's more than just about sleep. And working on kind of growing that part. And it's literally connected to different parts of our brain. Like the saboteurs come from our primitive survival, instinctual brain. And the sage comes from more of our prefrontal cortex and like the more developed parts of our brain. And so one way to really diminish the saboteurs and increase the sage is to do mindfulness exercises, which is something that you talk about as well. And it doesn't have to be sitting down and meditating for 15 minutes. Like I learned this. Shirzad Chamine is the man who came up with this concept of positive intelligence. And he talks about when you have a negative thought come into your head, when your saboteur is getting you, like you just close your eyes and rub your fingers together and just pay attention to how the ridges on your fingertips feel. It's really just about getting in the moment, which is what mindfulness is, right? Mm-hmm. Or like seeing, paying attention in great detail to what's in front of you, or listening to sounds far away and close together. So it can literally be a 10-second thing that helps just switch which part of the brain you're using.
I love this. The rubbing the hands together and feeling the ridges this is very tactile. I like tactile things. I like to touch things. I like to feel things. They would work really well for me because sitting down and meditating I tried this before and people are like, you're such a fitness person. This must be resonating with you. And I'm like, I get so antsy and I can't let go of anything. And now my knees are hurting and my back is hurting. Yeah. I was like, this is not working for me. I'm going to go for a walk instead.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be that. And it could be when you're walking, you just pay attention to your foot as it's touching the ground and your breathing and everything else. And that is enough to just switch what part of your brain you're using.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, if you don't use that positive intelligence, as you call it, we're pursuing the negative thoughts, the self-doubt, like your client said, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
All these things, and I, especially as women in midlife, we need to let go of this nonsense. This needs to go. We need to stop doubting ourselves. We need to look for sources like Martha and say, okay, there's somebody outside a different network that can help me with the needs I have in a holistic way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, going back to sleep one more time, what I say this sometimes too. I'm guilty of that. I was like, if I didn't sleep enough tonight, I'm going to make up tomorrow and go to bed an hour early. What is that something? What are your thoughts about that? Is that working? Am I just fooling myself?
Yeah. Well, I think it's better than not trying to make it up. I think where it gets a little dangerous is, let's say we're doing that 5 nights a week, Sunday through Thursday night. We're purposefully getting, say, only 6 hours of sleep and try to make up for it on the weekends. Well, our bodies accumulate what's called sleep debt. And so when we miss an hour of sleep, it wants to make up for that hour of sleep. But if you miss 2 hours of sleep all week long, then you have 10 hours of sleep debt. You're not going to be able to make that up on the weekend. So, I think if it's, every now and then where you're not going to get enough sleep one night, it's great to go to bed early the next night. But that's not I don't think a good or a healthy strategy for that to be, what you're doing every night.
A long-term strategy. No, this is not going to work.
Right.
What are your thoughts on taking naps?
So I actually recommend naps.
Yes.
Right. There's a lot of times for people with insomnia, it's not recommended because it can affect nighttime sleep. I have found that a short nap is the key and at the right time of day, and it won't affect nighttime sleep. So we have this dip in our circadian rhythm in the early afternoon. This is why so many cultures used to take naps and have a siesta, right? Because in the early afternoon, and this is assuming, say, a 10 to 6 sleep schedule. So then around 2:00, about halfway between, in the middle of the day is when we have this natural dip. And so it can be a great time to take a nap. If you take it too much later than that, it can interfere with nighttime sleep. And I also recommend it not being more than 30 minutes. So that way you aren't falling into the deeper stages of sleep. You're just staying in stage 1 and stage 2, which are the lighter stages of sleep. If you're trying to say you're traveling or, you've missed a lot of sleep lately, then it can be more appropriate to take a longer nap. But you want to then let your body sleep as long as you need to, like a full 90 minutes or a full sleep cycle. If you wake yourself up in an hour, that's when you wake up feeling groggy and awful because you're waking yourself up in the middle of a sleep cycle.
Because I hear this from some people. There's like, if I take a nap, I only take 2 hours because otherwise I feel groggy. And I'm like, well, if I were to take 2 hours during the day, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Yeah. So I do what you suggest. I do my 30 minutes between 1 and 2. So people, if you can't get a hold of me and I'm not responding to anything, I'm sleeping.
Yeah. And I also tell people, because when I was dealing with insomnia, I took a nap almost every day. I'd put my son down for a nap and I'm like, I'm just going to lie down. A lot of times I wouldn't even think that I slept, first of all, but then there might be a little drool on my pillow. So I'm like, well, I went to sleep, even though I didn't think so. Or other times I knew I wasn't sleeping, but I would still feel so much better after. So I think it's okay if you, like people say, I can't nap, I don't fall asleep. That's okay. If you feel tired at that time, just go lie down for 30 minutes and hopefully you feel a lot better after. I know that I always did.
You sound like my ex-husband. When our first son was born, I was trying to be the hero mom. I would clean the house and take care of the baby and do all the stuff. And I was always tired. And he's like, you are terrible. He says, go lie down. I was like, I can't sleep. I don't take naps. And he says, 30 minutes. I'll wake you up. Just lie down. And I did. And sometimes I would just literally lie there with my hands on my chest. And I'm like, okay, close your eyes. And like you said, I felt so much better, whether I slept or not. And to the day, my kids are now 34 and 30, almost 31. If I can, I take a nap every day for 30 minutes.
Awesome.
Like, that's my religion. Now, Martha, what is something that you wish somebody had asked you, interviewing you, and you have not been asked? And you said, oh man, why didn't they ask me this? Is there something that you feel compelled to share?
What I always feel compelled to share is I want people to know that they don't have to live with insomnia. So we've talked about you go to your doctor and kind of the only options are a sleep study or sleeping pills or following the sleep hygiene. And if those things don't work, I think a lot of people lose hope. And so I just want people to know, you are meant to sleep well. I think it is inevitable that anyone can sleep well. And so, we can find out why you aren't sleeping and fix that. And then you can sleep well.
That's a great advice for the end of our show. I love it. So Martha, how can people connect and reach you?
My website is thesleepdetective.com. And my Facebook page is the same. I'm on Instagram as Martha Lewis Sleep Detective. And my podcast is the Sleep Detective Podcast.
Super easy to find. I love it. And I love the Sleep Detective. It's like Inspector Gadget, with looking through a looking glass, and awesome. I love it. Well, Martha, thank you so much for being here and sharing some different thoughts on how our listeners can get better sleep that may make more sense than what they know.
Yes. Thanks, Heike, for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
So thanks for joining me in today's episode, What Your Insomnia, Your Midlife Insomnia is Trying to Tell You with Martha Lewis. I know you got a ton of golden nuggets out of this episode, and I would like to know how this episode helped you or which strategy you started with. So please send me an email to heike@heikeyates.com with the subject line Insomnia and let me know. But also, if you've been curious about Pilates and intermittent fasting and how that might all work together, I've got the thing for you. It's called the Fasted and Fit Over 50 Jumpstart. I designed this course specifically for women in midlife that want to feel healthier and stronger without getting bogged down by yet another diet or exercise program that just doesn't fit your lifestyle and your health goals. The course is super approachable, no fancy equipment, no special food to buy, and it's all at your own pace with 14 easy to follow with videos. Whether you're new to Pilates or you've never tried intermittent fasting but are curious to see if it's right for you, this course is perfect starting point for you. So I'll leave a link in the show notes for you to start your health and strength today. And I'll see you next time at the Pursue Your Spark podcast. Ciao.